It's a real case of deja vu tonight on Star Trek Discovery when we go back through the looking cage, all the way back to the original pilot. Plus, back to Spock and Burnham as little kids. Oh, aren't they adorable? Oh my God, they're jerks. And you know what? Grown-up Spock's kind of a jerk too. The Star Trek Discovery After Show starts now.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to the Star Trek Discovery After Show. I am Christian Bladt, joined as always by
Flobo Boyce, everybody. How's it going?
And on the far end of the desk, it's Frank Moran. Frank Moran, who ran here from the movie theater after seeing Captain Marvel.
That's true.
So, but you had watched Star Trek beforehand.
Of course.
So you didn't sit there in the theater watching Star Trek on your iPad with Captain Marvel behind you.
I took the back row so as not to let the illumination ruin anything.
Well, at least that's respect.
All the seasons hits at once.
Well, there's a lot to dive into with tonight's episode, and Frank, let's you and I start as the long-term Star Trek fans. Sorry, Flobo, we'll have to count you out for a second, just for a second on this.
I'm in the chat here with Stress-Free K and Beta Artemis. It's totally cool.
You got your friends.
Yeah, what's up, fam?
Yeah. How excited were you for that opening sequence, the previously on Star Trek, where it was just all footage from the cage?
I dug it.
Yeah.
I mean, what I like is that they just said, all right, yep, we know it's different actors playing these characters, so you're going to see immediately right after this, but who cares?
Yeah.
And it's I'm willing to go with it.
We're going to dissolve from Jeffrey Hunter into Anson Mount like that. It's fine.
Yes.
You'll get it. Yeah.
But it did, like, hearing like Jeffrey Hunter and his delivery, it's like, whew, man, Anson Mount. Yeah. I love him. I love him.
He reinvented Captain Pike. Yeah, it was all very exciting. And for those of you who watched the after show in the first season when this was a part of Star Trek Weekly, you know that Frank and I actually, not that long ago, within the last year or so, rewatched The Cage, which I felt was very helpful heading into this. Now, Flobo, you on the other hand, you haven't watched a lot of Star Trek. Sure. So, of course, you certainly haven't watched the original pilot, The Cage, which does not have the original crew except for really Mr. Spock. Did you feel like you had clicked on the wrong video?
Of course I did. I was like, what kind of time warp am I in? Is this some sort of like performance art where it's like Star Trek through the years? I had no idea. But I definitely got the transition that used to be a Pike, and now this is a new Pike, or a different new actor playing the same character.
Same character, but definitely a new actor. Yeah.
What I liked was also the blue flowers that they looked at.
Yeah.
The tease to when we see them in the actual episode. You're like, all right, this is a good example of where we've come, in terms of technology for producing a television show.
And I think for the Talosians themselves, yes, they were upgraded and they looked better, but it wasn't as stark as, say, I don't know, the Klingons when we, first see them in the movies and they look so completely. You're like, wait, we're supposed to accept that these are the same race of people. So I thought that they updated things very well, but you still felt like, all right, I can suspend some, basically production budget disbelief and just feel like this is the same place that they had been to previously.
I would agree, but I have to admit, I do enjoy the old school look of the Talosians. That look looked great, and this updated look, just like, it's okay. It's okay.
There's something to look at the Talosians. For me, I was like, are these country club people on vacation? It felt like, this is my wife, Muffy. Very logy kind of vibe.
Well, they have very gender-neutral clothing.
Yeah, I guess what you call that, sure. Today's Star Trek Fashion Report is brought to you by AfterBuzz.
Right, exactly. But I don't know. So obviously, it's exciting to see all of that, and we'll talk a little bit as to how they were able to incorporate some of these characters, but overall theme is we were waiting all season for Spock, and we finally gotten him, and man, he's a dick, and obviously we finally get to see the issues that he had with Burnham, which I think is there's a couple of moments that you feel like is fan service. One is, we need to see what it is that you had a fight about, because it is very important for us, not the viewers. We need to see it. I thought that was an interesting choice. And then also for Burnham to say, do you feel like the beard's working for you? Considering that has kind of been what the biggest question marks and criticism has been, like, I don't like Spock with the beard. What did you think, Flobo, of watching... Spock is obviously an iconic part of Star Trek, so he's somebody that you can't help but be familiar with.
Yeah.
But he's not a part of this show. So how do you think they did incorporating he and Burnham's relationship into the existing Star Trek Discovery universe?
Yeah, hands down, one of my favorite aspects of this episode was the relationship between Burnham and Spock, seeing the differences of the human and Vulcan mix and what that means in the relationship. I don't know if it was a lot of post-production, but I love Spock's bass in his voice.
Yeah.
Felt like very, like, in a good way. I felt convicted every time he said anything. The beard for me, meh, not a big deal. Although I think of Spock, it's totally beardless, even though I am part of beard gang myself.
Yeah.
But everything else besides that totally had presence. I totally felt what he meant. His emotions or logic or lack of emotions or logic was totally brought across. I was impressed with it 100%.
And, he does manage to throw some shade, even though he's supposed to be emotionless, Frank, at Burnham, an occasional, I don't understand why I looked up to you so much. Oh, Burn! Come on! What did you think? How do you think, look, this is now the third actor we've seen portray Spock. So, what did you think? Because I'd say before this doesn't really count because he was catatonic and barely, basically just giving out gibberish. What your first real reaction to seeing Ethan Peck as Spock? What are your thoughts?
It's because this is like the Spock that we see in terms of Star Trek chronology. It's 3 years after The Cage.
Yeah.
But and we see, of course, the Nimoy's performance as Spock hadn't fully locked in. The character hadn't quite coalesced at that point. But so there were still some touches of kind of, hints of emotion. And I guess it's 3 years, so I guess we can kind of dial that back and calibrate it between what we see there to what we see for the first episode of the original series and kind of see Spock in that. So for the Spock, I was fine with it. I once I got into the rhythm, I was like, all right, yep, okay. It's Ethan Peck doing this. Yeah, what's the voice? What's the cadence like? All right, I'm willing to go with this. I have to admit, and I thought this was going to be the case. When you draw out for so long over the course of the season what this conflict was between Burnham and Spock that led to this tremendous rift that Burnham was so ashamed, and it's like, I was expecting something better than what we got here. This is just kind of like, oh, okay.
Well, I have a question. Did you expect like a argument or something like violent or like
I don't know if nothing violent, but in terms of if it was some sort of bigger betrayal, I thought it was going to be more than just a childhood spat.
Okay.
And the logical creature that he is, Spock completely understood what she was doing, and I like that. Her defense, Burnham's defense, was that it wasn't just trying to distance myself. It was physically, I felt like the family was going to get hurt, but it was interesting to see sort of that. The young Spock like pleading and saying like it's our family, you're my sister and all that. And I thought the nice thing there, obviously he's a different actor, but it was consistent with the young Spock that we saw in, I think it was the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek, that we sort of see him as a young boy, and you can kind of just feel the obviously he just has so much trouble dealing with his emotions, and so like child Spock being so emotional, I think is it's a nice touch because it's on target, it's canon, it's all the things that you look for, and all that.
I guess in a sense it was because according to the story, she does this terrible thing to Spock, says this terrible things, then takes off and runs away, and then Spock's visited by the Red Angel, sees the vision of the future that Burnham dies, and then goes tells her parents and Burnham is saved. So timeline changed. So he cared enough that he wanted to make sure that his sister was saved, and so she's brought back to the house. And so what? Then they just never spoke? They never dealt with the ramifications of what was said between the two of them? They just stood there quietly? If it would have been almost like a montage of the beginning of Frozen, where you see Anna and Elsa, where you see as they get older, there's just that distance that keeps growing between them. Yeah. If you were to show me that, but that it would just coalesce to that one particular instant, I was like, I don't know if I buy that.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I was just curious.
I mean, look, to be fair, Spock wanted to build a snowman. Okay?
That's true.
But there's no. I don't think there's snow on Vulcan. There must be. There must be a region. You know, there must be like a Siberia. You know.
I thought the portrayal itself, if I had to guess, like if I was in predictions in episode 1 and 2, would be more like the family chose Michael over something, or Spock over Michael, and that caused a rift. So this particular spat, that seems kind of small. That's why I was asking, what were you thinking of? But yeah, I mean, I'll accept it for what it is. I mean, at this point, it was discussed for so long, it was almost like impossible to be like, oh snap, that's
yeah.
the
But
reason,
to Frank's point, I definitely expected a little bit more.
Yeah.
I don't know what exactly it was, but well, we didn't get it. So
Because it seemed when we first see Burnham introduced at the beginning of the season to Spock as children, he has that reaction and kind of runs away from her. So you feel like, all right, that rift happened. You know, there already was some kind of struggle between the two of them. So to go to what you were saying, it's like, yeah, I could buy that if that happened, kind of grows out of that. But it seems like that initial meeting happens, then they become incredibly close,
Right.
and then we just see they have one argument, and then that was it. So, I don't know.
let's talk for a moment about Vina. Do you feel, Frank, that this sort of midpoint in the story of Pike and Vina, do you think it tracks with when we see him interacting with her in the cage, and when we see ultimately how he goes to Talos 4 in the menagerie, basically to do what she did, is like, yeah, well, I can kind of live as a person here, or I could be a piece of furniture with a blinking light if I stay in the rower. If you ever watch the original series, you'll get that.
That's true. It's great. It's because when they first start off the episode, and you just see that it's Spock and Burnham.
Yeah.
And Discovery is sent on this. You know, they're just going to be, on scrap patrol. So I'm like, oh man, are they just going to keep Pike out of this? Because it's like that's someone you really want to see go back and deal with Talos 4. So I am glad that we got to see him get integrated more into that A storyline.
Well, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's important, and I know I like the way that it was all incorporated in there. I don't know. There's still that part of me that just has this feeling of like it's weird that they go back to Talos 4. They do a good job explaining why it was important to Spock and all of these things, but at the same time, I don't know. It just felt like it sort of takes away from them going back at the end of the menagerie. So it's like whenever Spock does something that gets him in trouble with Starfleet, it involves going to Talos 4. It's like twice now.
Right.
Well, this is the first time, but in our, here's the problem, because like with Spock, the timeline is fluid. We've seen the future, and now we're back in the past.
Right.
But it's non-linear for all
Flat
of us.
circle, man.
What are people in the chat saying?
Yeah, shout out to everyone in the chat. I mean, we got like a good crew going right now, and we're talking about before about the spat between Spock and Burnham. Beta Artemis says, Stress-Free K says that it makes sense. Calling Spock a half-breed would wound baby Spock to the core, because that's what the other kid Vulcans say too, which I thought was a pretty cool way of looking at that relationship. But ultimately, the chat does agree it was a bit of a letdown as to what was the spat between Spock and Michael Burnham. On the subject of Vina, for someone who has not seen the menagerie at the cage, I thought it was interesting to give Pike a little bit of color, right? We saw his leadership skills, and here the first time we saw him as like a dude with feelings, you know what I mean? And being able to say, look, I have this dynamic of my responsibilities, but I have these feelings for you, but what's the mission? And to me, I just thought that made Pike even more layered, not knowing what the events were.
Yeah, no, I do think it is great to always get to see sort of the human side. James C. Kirk probably a little too human, a little too in touch with his emotions, a little too quick to, you'd fall in love with a cup of coffee, basically. But I thought it does make for a nice balance, everything that we saw from Pike throughout the course of the episode. We also dealt a lot with Section 31, and I think that we're really seeing Captain Georgiou is basically it has everything playing out exactly the way she wants it to. It's just setting Leland up to fail at every turn, by literally sabotaging him. and then also just withholding information. Like, oh, did I forget to tell you that Talos 4, the Talosians, that they got mind control? Oh man, I really should have told. That would have been useful, wouldn't it? This is maybe the third time now that she does one of those, like, oh yeah, can't wait to see you explain that to the admirals. And then she just does like this walk. You know, she just like struts off, and this was not the first time we've seen it. Yeah. And she's just so proud with herself. You know,
yeah,
the way that an emperor should be. By the way.
Yeah, she's walked away casually. She's eating apples casually.
Yeah, that's true.
What can she do?
Yeah.
I understand why it seems like she's going to have a takeover, mutiny, insurrection. I mean, it's a mutiny, but it's in space, I guess, right? But I'm like, Leland, what are you doing? Like, why are you setting yourself up to be shot in the foot every time?
I mean, shouldn't you throw her in the brig or something? Yeah. I mean, I don't know what he can actually get away with doing. There has to be something that, I don't know, push her down a well? Yeah, something that he could do.
Right.
What do you think, Frank, about the way that Georgiou is playing all of this?
I mean, it's interesting, but there really is no push and pull with it. It is basically she's always
one-upping
push. Yeah. And so it's like this is Section 31. I know Emperor Georgiou, he comes from the mirror universe. She's very conniving and devious.
Yeah.
But still, Section 31 is sort of the black ops of Starfleet. So they're looking for the people that have very moral ambiguity. I was expecting Leland to be able to at least match her. It would have been a little bit more interesting. But I feel almost like this is just getting you invested in the Section 31 world to get to the point to when they actually jumpstart the series. It's like Georgiou's the head of, or at least the captain of this ship. Yeah. Leland's been dismissed, and now we're just we're already at starting point with Georgiou doing it.
To the point of her strutting off eating the apple, I liked when she was communicating with Discovery. And she's like, I have to go, I'm very busy. And then she drinks her tea.
Yes.
Yeah. She's like, for those of you that are watching on YouTube, I'm very busy. Georgiou out, Right. So, I mean, it's very entertaining to watch. Obviously, I'm not invested in Leland. That's fine if she ruins his career. He doesn't really seem like a guy that we should be sympathetic towards.
True, but do you want to see it at least a little bit more like Georgiou's got to work a little bit?
I would hope that there is a surprise somewhere, as this story plays out, where he actually is able to kind of pull one over on her. I don't think he has it in him at this point, but that's probably why it would be a nice surprise. We also got to see inside of Spock's mind, we got to see the moment that he's accused of killing three people who we had seen very much alive earlier in the episode, which, just to backtrack to the Spock-Burnham dynamic, that I thought was very telling, what he says to her, which is like, you're seeing my actual memories, and you still have to verify with me that this is what really happened. Right. It's like, maybe the problem is with you, Michael. But I don't know. I thought it was cool to kind of see, like, Spock's like, all right, yeah, I got to get out of here now. And they're like, oh no. And even this young Spock, he can still, he can still take out. I mean, it's just three. I mean, he's still Spock. What did you think, Flobo, about kind of watching, because that was something that we've known this whole season that he's accused of. Right. What did you think finally getting to see the incident in question?
Yeah, there was no doubt in my mind that Spock was innocent, right? I didn't think he'd be killing people and be like, oh, no, I'm Spock. What are you talking about? But it was definitely interesting.
That'd be great defense. Yeah. Come on, I'm Spock.
hey, bada boom. In space. The thing is, though, I didn't think that he'll actually go full Vulcan grip on them, I guess, but it was pretty cool to see that he was a person of action when he understood the situation arose, and it wasn't just like someone set him up by like telegram or something or whatever the equivalent is.
Telegram.
Singing telegram for Mr. Spock.
Get their murder. Ha ha.
This is the Red Angel. Stop. Let's come back in time. Stop.
Well, speaking of the Red Angel, we're just getting a little bit of information that it's human, so that might put a hole in some of the theories that we've shared, but the idea that it could be a future Spock as the Red Angel, he's half human, so perhaps it's entirely plausible that it still could be. Frank, how did you feel? Did you feel that we got enough new information about the Red Angel?
Well, it was interesting that Spock mind melds with it. So this angel's like cool enough to like, yeah, I'll let you mind meld with me. But I also thought mind melding, you needed to have skin to skin contact that you couldn't, because that was the deal with Wrath of Khan.
Yes.
That's what's like, I couldn't
But
touch
they've
Spock.
established in Discovery now that Sarek and Burnham, I mean, no, that's not really a mind meld, but they have that very long distance communication.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, I do recall that the skin to skin was a very important part of the mind meld, but they don't seem to really be sticking with that.
Oh, great. That's cool.
So let's just ignore those rules.
Yes. I mean, I would believe it if it was a future set scene where it's like they have, evolved and updated their skill set.
Also, if it's like, if it's, say, Ambassador Spock that ended up in the Kelvin timeline, well, he's like hundreds of years older, so he would probably, he'd be much more skilled.
Yes.
Flobo, do you feel like the Red Angel storyline is playing out in a timely enough fashion, or are they not giving us enough?
Well, I thought a lot was happening visually about the Red Angel. With the chat right here, Beta Artemis says it's future Pike. But last week, I will swear to you that I saw some childbearing hips. I thought it was a female form for that Red Angel. I do think though.
Don't body shame Captain Pike.
Hey
Come
man,
on.
he's been hitting the gym.
That's true.
I do think that there is a pickup in the Red Angel stuff, and I'm actually more invested in it now. I think this episode was one of the last two where it wasn't in the background. It wasn't like oh yeah. It did seem like it was part of the A story. So I'm on board to find out who it is, or whom it is, or it might be.
It can't happen fast enough. It's just, you don't need to wrap up the storyline, but just show the cards to the viewers at least.
Yeah.
Like, this is who the Red Angel is. So we're a little bit ahead of the cast. They're still trying to figure it out. But, man, get us more invested in this. Because right now I'm just like, I feel like about this revelation is the way I'm going to feel about the Spock Burnham connection. It's like, you dragged it out so long, by the time you reveal it to me, am I really going to care?
Good point.
Frank, what if it's Will Riker running a holodeck simulation?
That would
and
be the best.
all of Discovery has just been a holodeck simulation.
And we plot and we're in a museum. And that would be
and
great.
then, and then it goes right into the Picard show.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
I think I just ruined both shows, but I connected the dots. Let's talk about. I was glad we finally got this story that I thought we'd gotten hints of where it was going with Stamets and Hugh. The fact that he's not the same person. And, obviously the dinner that Stamets is trying to serve him was a none too subtle metaphor. He's like, I don't feel any connection to this. I have memories of that, but I don't. He's like, kind of like everything, you. So I thought it was well done. It was, you can't help but feel for Stamets because he's just like, I'm just trying to do it. Look, anybody that's ever tried to hold on to any kind of relationship that you knew wasn't really working, you can kind of sympathize with that. Now, maybe most of us don't have a partner who died and was brought back to life through some magical fungi. Yeah. But, some of us might, anybody in the chat who did have that happen, please let us know. Because I would like to hear that story, actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah, please. I'd like to option it and possibly write a screenplay.
I will personally fly you out here so you can sit here next week and tell us about this.
But you got to bring the fungus.
Yes.
It has to come. But I don't know, I thought it was... look, there. Obviously, this is the Spock season. There was a lot of things happening to advance the arc of the season, but I was glad that we got the time for that. Speaking only about the interaction between Hugh and Stamets for the moment, what did you think, Flobo, kind of watching that unfold?
You know what? I wrote it on my notes that my heart broke when Stamets said, "Why are you so angry with me?" I was like, "Oh man, it was just like you can tell that his heart is on his sleeve. Stamets, his heart is on his sleeve, and he loves his partner. Were they ever officially married?
I think he did refer to him as his husband.
Okay,
I might be wrong, but that's a good question. Somebody in the chat correct me because that's why we have the chat, so I can be corrected.
I do have. I'll bring the fungus coming from the chat. Shout out to Beta Artemis.
Beta Artemis is like, oh yeah, I got a yard of fungus. Yeah, that's fine.
Their interaction to me was just so poignant because there definitely was like this this trap they could have fell into of being like, whoa, now that I'm back, let's go back to the way it was.
Yeah.
And having Hugh going like, look, I understand. I love you, but this is not right for me. Was enough interaction for me to say, I understand that.
It's not even like I love you. It's like I remember as a fact that I loved you. But it's also like I remember as a fact that Abraham Lincoln was a president.
Yeah,
you know, it's like it's just right there on the list.
Right.
I thought it. Yeah, I mean, heartbreaking is definitely the way to describe it. What did you think of watching that, Frank?
It is interesting because if this had been first season Discovery, I feel that this storyline would have been marginalized, and we only would have seen just the extreme points, and never really got a chance to see a little bit of the stuff leading in between those points. Yeah. So I feel like this season has done a much better job about fleshing out all the crew. So to be able to at least carve out a little bit of an episode to just focus on the two of them was nice. I mean, I have to admit, I'm more interested in this storyline right now than the Red Angel, just because I think it's, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I can understand the stakes. I know all the situations here, and I can appreciate it. Now it's just these two characters interacting in their dynamics about solving the situation.
And it obviously escalates from there. Something that I expected was not going to happen in this episode. I was like, okay, they're setting us up for something. But he goes right into the mess hall and goes right over to Tyler's table. And the most interesting thing about that altercation is that only Tilly tried to break them up. Yep. Everybody else is like, "Oh, we are watching this."
Yeah, exactly.
And
it's like, calm down, rookie. Let him fight.
Yeah, and look, and obviously Captain Pike makes the point to Saru, but when he was still terrified of everything that happened, he would have responded differently in that situation for sure, because his whole thing is to avoid conflict, especially for himself, but having any kind of conflict near him would have made him uncomfortable. And
I do like that they're addressing those types of changes with the character.
Yeah, and I think that they're letting the show breathe so much more this year than they did last season, where it really was the Michael Burnham show. And look, she's an important part of the show. She's great, but I'm glad that while she's doing important Spock-related things, we're also getting to see what's going on back on Discovery, And I think they're servicing the crew in a short amount of time better than I can remember. Like for a season 2 of any Star Trek series, for us to getting to see this kind of character development, I can't think of anything that really compares to it. Just for me personally, you can correct me if you need to.
But there's a lot of character boards there.
I was just impressed about Hugh's. I was like, this is going to be a pretty one-sided fight.
Yeah.
When he goes up against Tyler, but it's like, all right, Hugh, you're doing all right. I mean, I know Tyler's trying to hold back because he doesn't want to get too crazy about the guy that he killed before, but still, I was like, he was doing all right.
Yeah, and to your point about Saru, it was almost like you got into his head and go, well, I mean, for Hugh, Ash is his Bahul, so go ahead, get yours, homie. You know what I mean? So, respect.
Yeah, and, I think on some level, Tyler's like, all right, I got it. Yeah, I got a couple of, pops in the mouth coming to me because I snapped your neck. I killed you. Sure. So go ahead. Is it going to make you feel better to punch me? And I was glad to see that it doesn't work that way, as Tyler said, that, it's like, oh, you want Vok? Hang on a minute. And he just does like some jazz hands in front of his face, and then he starts speaking Klingon,
Right.
So, I don't know, I thought that, I think this season, really ever since we've found out about the Vok aspect of it, Tyler hasn't been someone that's easy to sympathize with. But in this situation, you're like, okay, you're not really the guy who killed him, but, you could definitely hurt him, now. So he handled it, I think, the best way that he could.
How do you feel about the Tyler Pike relationship? Because he brings him in and says, hey, we've had some stuff happen between the two of us recently.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, buddy? Let's drink some scotch
And by
together.
recently, it's like just last week. Because before last week, we didn't have anything. Yeah. I think it's interesting, and I did want to move to that next, that watching it develop, it's like there is this cautious trust that they're trying to build, and they were not there yet.
Yes.
And then obviously we get to a point where we can't see that. But in response to Frank's question, what did you think, Flobo?
Yeah, I think that their relationship to me has been one of the few that I enjoy as small nuggets they are. Pike gives him a lot of latitude to explain himself. And you see little by little, but what he's saying, he goes, okay, I'll take that, yes, and. I think at first there was a lot of pushback. What are you doing here? Where are you from? Now it's like, what's your relationship with Burnham? Tell me now. And he tells him, and you're like, oh, okay. Well then, so to me, I feel like there was a long-term play until, the events later on in the episode where they think that he betrayed the crew. For a while there, I was like, well, maybe they might turn a little leave. Maybe they might become like an uneasy alliance. Maybe they might become even friends,
Well, I do like when he says, hey, I trust Burnham over Section 31. I feel like Pike takes that in and it's like, all right, yeah. Okay, I'm getting where this guy's coming from at least a little bit.
Right. And Arium screws it all up.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the interesting thing because we obviously know that, Arium is setting up Tyler because he's a very believable patsy, just be like, secret transmissions. Oh, the guy who works for the Black Ops and keeps letting you know that he has to keep in touch with them. That would make sense. Oh, sabotaging the spore drive. That would make sense. They still got there really fast, by the way, without the spore drive.
True.
Yeah. I was like, oh, wait, they got there this week? I thought that meant that they wouldn't get there till now. Oh, okay, they're there just like a couple minutes later. Okay. So the spore drive would have been like that, and then otherwise it was like 3 minutes. Okay.
But, when Tyler says, hey, the reason I joined Section 31 is that, it's given my background, I see that there are people that are trying to do good stuff, and where I'm at right now, I think I could be of help there. Which I guess I would buy if we saw like anybody else of like kind of upstanding moral character in Section 31. We haven't yet, and I mean, I'll give Tyler some slack because we know more about him in his past. But so far, anybody else we've met from Section 31, just been a bunch of just kind of morally dubious.
Yeah,
jerks.
I mean, when you operate in the gray area as Section 31 does, you do need some people that can act as a moral compass of like, okay, we can do that, but just, hear me out. Here's kind of the other side of it, something to think about. Instead of everybody's like, yeah, this seems good, let's just go ahead and do this.
You need that one
eat apples.
wash out.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And there were a couple of nice moments, just to backtrack to, because I found the quote, but when, after that altercation between Hugh and Tyler, that was Pike just reprimanding Saru, like, come on, man, you're the guy who needed to really step that up. And the direct quote from Saru is, the Starfleet manual offers no regulatory guidelines for interactions between humans with Klingons grafted to their bones and a ship's doctor returned from the dead. Mic drop. And Pike's like, yeah, right. This is a little bit of a special circumstance, but let's not just have people start settling their gripes, with fisticuffs, as it were.
But I would like to see that the Starfleet manual just constantly updated as these things happen. These new experiences. Okay, and this and this.
That's in the manual now. Right. It's just at this time it wasn't. Yeah. But I thought that. The Talosian projection was kind of used very well to Captain Georgiou's benefit. I don't know when Vina tells Pike, yeah, go ahead, let them have your friend. I'm like, all right, so they're gonna figure out some kind of mind control stuff, But I did think it was a cool trick, one that you can't use that often because you don't tend to have powerful telepaths on the show. What did you think about that, Flobo? Did you think it was cool, or was it just like, or what did you think of it? Instead of answering.
It was a trick. It was a cool trick, but a trick nonetheless. I did like the idea of having the double beam like showdown, talking about the atom splitting and stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And I obviously didn't think that it's going to be, like half a Burnham or something, but how are they going to get out of this? And once I saw them on the ship, I realized, oh wait, this is the one people that can totally make that a farce, but what would be the actual way of getting on board? Them coming through a hatch in the back with the spaceship was like, oh, okay, ha ha ha, see you next week, But it wasn't bad. It was just kind of like, okay, I thought,
What did you feel about that, Frank? That moment, the astral projection, as it were.
Yeah. I figure anybody that is a Star Trek fan is going to figure out, like, oh yeah, this is what's going on.
Well, but considering that we had seen, Venus show up in Pike's quarters earlier in the episode, so.
So when they show up on the Section 31 ship, and then nobody really. they just tell them to. And nobody really interacts with them until like, oh, we conveniently warped out of the system. Oh, all right, now let's talk to them.
Now let's ask you a question.
Yeah.
Shaking fist. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I'm finding the, apart from what I think was episode 3, which was just painful. But in general, I like the overall arc of the season. I think that, they're telling a very different story than season 1, which I think is important because you don't want it to feel like more of the same. I like where it's going. I'm continually becoming more interested in the Red Angel, not blown away by it, not like dying to know more. This isn't like I have to tune in and find out more about this Red Angel.
Yep.
I'm just like, well, fine, is Spock going to shave the beard or what? I'm more interested in Spock and his beard. Well, just because it's just
like the reverse Klingon, like they get hair, he loses hair.
Right, exactly. That's he has it. It's his playoff beard. What are your overall thoughts? And then we'll take a couple minutes from the chat. But overall thoughts, Flobo, on the way the season's playing.
The season,
through these first 8 episodes.
Sure, I was the first episode. I was like, I'm back in the saddle, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Watching the first 5 or 6, I go, okay, there's a different set of flaws in this season, but I still like the show, and there were some moments there I was kind of rough on. I don't really like May that much this season, or I wasn't that a fan of the Vulcan baby head we always talk about in the show. I do see a bit of a turn now. I do see that it's going to come to something that's way more enjoyable than I was giving it credit for. And today's episode, I will say, was actually one of my favorites. We had romance, we had action, we had suspense, we had almost every genre under the sun. Politics, like warring classes of ships. It was great. But I think there's more to come.
And the key for what you said there, Flobo, was the romance. That's right. Ladies, gentlemen, just so you know, Flobo's a lover.
That's right.
That's right.
Frank, your thoughts on season 2 so far? You can contrast it to season 1 or stand however you want to look at it.
What I've enjoyed about this season, I feel like I'm enjoying better than season 1. But this episode kind of made me, in contrast to a few episodes ago, where we just play, as previously on, from the cage.
Yeah.
And we're all going to buy in. They're expecting the viewers to buy in. Like these, as I said at the beginning, these are different actors playing these same characters. You're going to go good to go. We've accepted all that. But to have a few episodes back, Pike say, "Oh yeah, we got to rip out these holograms on the Enterprise. I just need view screens." Like, why do we need to acknowledge that? Like, we all just accept we are in an updated version of this universe. We're still in the same time frame. But let's just go with the flow on this then at that point. You may as well, because otherwise, why are we constantly trying to make you think, oh, yeah, no, we're still like the original series. Everything's going to look like it did. It's not. There's no way it is.
Let's be like Stamets. We have to move forward.
Yeah.
Let's not look back.
But and it's because of the unknown. So for season 3, who knows who the captain's going to be, whether they're going to continue Pike for one more season for whatever reason, or they get a new captain. But I will miss Pike. Whenever he does leave the show.
Yeah,
he's been great.
If they do decide that, the response has been good, that it's worked well, they want to keep him for season 3, I'll be fine with that.
Absolutely.
But, if they don't, then they've set the precedent that they're going to have a different captain every season.
Yeah, and I think this is the bar really high.
And it's going to turn into Murphy Brown's assistants, where it's going to be stunt casting and cameos and things.
But I don't know if I'd want that, though. I feel like if you're going to, I'm fine with changing it one more time.
I would like a captain who's that when they get whoever the next captain is, I think that it should at least be largely permanent.
Yeah.
Unless they die heroically, which probably would happen.
It's true.
Flobo, what are they saying in the chat?
Give it up to everyone in the chat. Stress Free K has one of my favorite comments of the night. Spock could trim the beard a bit of his cheeks. So props for the hairstyling systems over there.
That's almost as bad as having neck beard. It goes a little high. It's like practically like under his eyes. Yeah.
Beta Artemis says when the team was beamed on the Section 31 ship, I love the sassy goodbye Spock when he was disintegrated by the mind meld.
Yeah, the say goodnight, Gracie.
Yeah.
Good night, Spock. Yeah.
Good night, exactly. Good night, Spock. And one more thing from Beta Artemis. In the Mirror Universe, they could have tricked Mirror Georgiou. So I was thinking about this earlier. I know we have some Georgiou action coming with her role in the Section 31 spinoff, the Untitled thing, but that raises a question. Do you think more Mirror people would be available to be culled for this, or are we going to keep things in this universe and have her be the only?
It's a great question. I mean, I think you have a wide variety of characters that you can see, and you can see characters that you'll get to know in the future on Star Trek, the original series, or possibly even much younger versions of, some alien characters who can be a few hundred years old from later. So you can kind of figure out a way to have anybody from the mirror universe. But I think that shouldn't be the gimmick for Section 31. I think you have this one person from the mirror universe, and obviously she's in no rush to go back there because, the only reason she's still alive is because, Burnham kicked her over here. Right. What do you think about that, Frank, about the potential of more mirror universe?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but then I think it opens up too many things where it's like now you're saying there's a bunch of people in this from the mirror universe before we actually really delved into that in the original series. So I think they're going to probably keep Georgiou as kind of more of just the outlier for this. At least I think that would make sense because that's easy to kind of wash away to say like, oh yeah, and that's why nobody really knows about this mirror universe. You start bringing in so many more people, it's going to be harder to keep that a secret.
Yeah, I mean, she does mention it fairly casually. You would assume that Leland would be somebody with some kind of clearance to know, but yeah.
And it feels like, we know Leland's not going to be disposed of until Burnham finds out that he's the one that killed her parents.
Yeah.
So at least we feel like that's going to, which I feel like doesn't pay off until like the season finale.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, exactly. We are out of time, so thank you to everyone in the chat. Thanks to Frank. Thanks to Flobo.
Thanks, Christian.
Thanks to the crew of the Discovery. Thanks to everyone. But we are out of time. And if you would like to keep in touch with me, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. Sunday nights, I am one of the hosts of Marvel TV Weekly here on AfterBuzz TV, and Thursdays at 1 Pacific over on the Popcorn Talk Network, Marvel Movie News. Both shows very Captain Marvel heavy. Flobo, where do people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Flobo Boyce, on Instagram at Flopito and Flopito.com. But before I go today's ABCD, Above and Beyond the Call of Duty Award. Yeah. I'm giving it to Stamets. Why? Because his heart is totally out there, bro. He's out there doing his job, trying to do the whole warp drive thing and hold his man. Ugh! Love it.
I'm gonna give it to Tilly because she tried to break up the fight, and I read this and I had like 4 different websites open. Maybe it was Den Geek. Somebody pointed out she tried to break up the fight. That's leadership material.
Okay.
There you go. The command track, everybody.
And Frank, where do people find you?
Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HappyGoJackie. SciFiWire.com just put out a top 10 of their favorite Klingons. Listen, Bentor guys never made it. So sorry, guys, they never made it on there.
Is Christopher Lloyd on there?
Nope.
Oh, come on.
2 is Worf. 1 is Martok. Everybody.
I mean, I do like Martok.
What about Takuvma?
Takuvma. All right. Thank you, everyone. We will be back next Thursday at 10 Pacific. Until then, live long and prosper.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.